And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Sipshet people. The medieval term freeman meant someone who was not the property of a feudal lord, but enjoyed privileges such as right to earn money and own land. Town dwellers who were protected by the charter of their town or city were often free, hence the term freedom of the city. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives as Vista Douglas makes a declaration.
November 27, 1993 was an important day for the hospital.
I, Vesta Douglas, declare this scanner in operation officially.
Dozens of people gathered to see the unveiling of the CT scanner. It had taken 4 years for the R.E.M. Lee Foundation to raise more than $600,000 to buy the sophisticated equipment. And it was done with little outside help or encouragement.
We've had different ministers over this period of time, and the one minister at that time indicated, well, if you fellows raise the money for the scan, well, then come and talk to me. The bureaucrats were saying, oh, you fellows will never get a scan up there because governments won't go with this, because you must have 150,000 people within a certain radius. Well, the whole Northwest would never get a scan on the basis of statistics. And I guess maybe that spurred us on a little harder.
At the November 27th opening, the R.E.M. Lee Foundation was highly praised. But one of the driving forces behind the organization was quick to point out where the credit really belongs.
What the foundation is, it's you people, from children that sold chocolates to raise money for the CT scan, to people that bought calendars, to corporate donors. The foundation is the community.
The swift response of people in Terrace 2, the CT scan drive, amazed even the man for whom the foundation was named.
Michael, it's a matter of total shock, because I really didn't believe that we would ever have such a piece of equipment in this hospital. 7 years ago when I left, they established the foundation that bears my name, and they said that one of the things they want to do is buy a CT scanner. And I said, well, good luck, but other places haven't been able to do that. So lo and behold, a very short time later, here it is. And it's going to be one great piece of equipment as far as the medical care in Terrace is concerned.
It will certainly enhance health care in the Northwest, but how? That's what people who visited the View Room, as it will be known, wanted to know. The scanner looks like a square donut threaded by an army cot. But what does it do?
All you need to do is just lie there very still. It takes about 10 minutes. The CT scanner is a highly specialized X-ray machine. It takes pictures inside the body that are represented as cross-sectional slices, as if we sliced up a loaf of bread, and we're able to look at each slice and see where all the bits and pieces inside in relation, and primarily to look at the anatomy and look for changes in the anatomy of structures within the body.
So this is where we're able to look at the brain. All the gray stuff in here is brain, and the white is bone, black is air. So you can see we're actually looking at the brain.
About 60% of the work still is with heads, because that's the first region that it was used for. The brain has always been inaccessible to investigation imaging, primarily because it's encased in a hard skull and you can't view it directly. There has always been indirect means by pumping dyes into the arteries or putting air into some parts of the brain. These were risky, these were difficult, expensive, and time-consuming. Then with the advent of CT scanning, 10 minutes in the scanner, we can actually look at the brain, its shape, its size, look for changes in anatomy due to other disease processes.
I'm just going to
As Dr. Lee mentioned, acquisition of the scanner is a major development for healthcare in the Northwest, but it's also a major step for Mills Memorial.
I've always said that the Mills Memorial Hospital has to become the regional hospital of the Pacific Northwest because of geography, and of course now the population is larger here, but mainly on the fact that it's a crossroads. Something like the Mayo Clinic, when the Mayo brothers started their clinic, they chose a small railway town of Rochester because it was a confluence of rails, and that great clinic grew up there simply on that basis. And well, Terrace may become a Mayo Clinic sometime too, or the Mills Memorial Hospital.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. 6 months after returning to his native homeland of England, Dr. Jeffrey Appleton realized he'd like to return to BC. He took over a practice in Terrace because of the equality and mutual respect he found among the physicians there, and because working in the more isolated community meant he had an opportunity to branch out into other areas of practice, such as general surgery. Let us return to their archives with Dr. Appleton.
Doctors in Terrace are also pleased that Mills Memorial now has another piece of modern technology available for their patients.
In that it really helps our subspecialists a lot to have this equipment here. It's a regional piece of equipment. It was funded, of course, by donations from Terrace people, largely, but it still will serve a regional function. So for the entire Northwest, it's going to help every person here.
And there's another benefit for patients in the Northwest. Until now, they had to travel outside the region for a CT scan. Expensive trips because of airfares, accommodation, and meals.
The people of Terrace, in order to get this type of examination, have actually been subsidizing the healthcare system right out of their pockets. Because to go down to have a CT scan, when you consider usually you fly down in an emergency, costs you $1,200, $1,500 round trip, and you pay for that.
And local practitioner Dr. Jeffrey Appleton admits having the CT scanner in Terrace will make it easier for physicians to recommend the procedure for patients.
Under those circumstances, one's somewhat reluctant to do so unless there's a very good indication for it. A lot of tests that we do come back normal, which is excellent, but when a patient has to spend all that money to go down to Vancouver and get a normal test, it can be somewhat irritating.
Yes, the CT scanner is a major plus for Mills Memorial and healthcare in the Northwest. But that's not to say there aren't limitations and concerns.
People have to realize that a CAT scanner is, judged these days, a pretty standard piece of equipment. There's nothing magic about it. It's routine stuff now, just as X-rays have become. But a lot of things that a CAT scanner can't do, and there's a lot of things that other investigations are better for. For example, nuclear medicine, we have a nuclear medicine facility here, and we have had for some time. It's much better at detecting certain things than the CAT scanner. And people shouldn't have the impression that the CAT scanner will do everything for everybody. It will not. One thing it won't do, of course, is to look at your whole body. We often have people coming in saying they'd like to go through the CAT scanners, they can have a checkup and do the whole bit so they know there's nothing wrong with it. That's not how it functions at all. It really has to be aimed at a certain region to be effective. Having said that, it still is a tremendous advance for our area. We're getting into the 20th century now.
Hospital officials admit the use of the scanner must be closely monitored.
That's something, of course, that gave us some concern when we went through the development of the service, is that with the service present and so easily accessible, the question was, would there be a greater demand than would normally be warranted? But I think the X-ray department and the radiologist, I mean, part of their job is being to educate the medical community as to what is appropriate usage of the CT scan, and they're developing protocols and that sort of thing so that there isn't, is using your example, that someone who has a headache today doesn't automatically go to the CT scan. Everyone is very sensitive to the cost of a CT scan.
And speaking of money, The REM Lee Foundation did raise more than $600,000 to buy the equipment, but it's an expensive machine to operate, and that means its use must be limited.
Well, the concern is that the government, in a way, was pushed into accepting the CAT scan as a reality. Basically, the community went ahead, as you know, through the REM Lee Foundation, gathered the money for the equipment and said, fine, to the government, it's here, let's get it installed. I don't know what the installation costs were, but they were probably fairly significant. That was paid for. Following that, the government has said that they will fund the running of the CAT scanner to, I believe, 75% of the cost, which is just under $300,000 a year. But it means that there's a finite budget. It means that there's a X numbers of dollars for that particular piece of equipment. If we go over that, there's nothing to pay for it, and we certainly can't take it out of the general hospital budget because that's in a shortfall anyway. So we're looking at having to restrict the usage of that piece of equipment should we not be able to get extra funding.
The next step for Mills Memorial is to find a full-time radiologist. Presently, experts from Richmond fly up every week or so to read the scans and x-rays done on patients. It's an acceptable solution for the moment, but Michael Leisinger hopes it won't last long.
We're actively recruiting for a radiologist. It's not uncommon for northern and isolated hospitals to, it's a little bit difficult for us to attract specialists. But we're quite confident that we'll be able to find a permanent radiologist to provide a resident service. And we're also thinking that now with the CT scanner, that perhaps there's enough workload for 2 radiologists. And that, of course, helps in the retention of the radiologist. That way they're not on call, solo practice. They have a colleague that they can get another opinion from. It just makes life for a specialist that much easier if there's another colleague there to back them up and to consult with.
But while there are concerns about radiology and about operating the CT scanner, the important fact is that it's up and running. In less than 4 weeks, more than 100 patients had undergone the process. Now, using the guideline of $1,000 for each trip outside the region for a scan, that's more than $100,000 that remained in the Northwest. The hospital estimates as many as 2,000 people, possibly more, will use the scanner in its first year of operation. That's $2 million at least that won't be leaving the region. At $600,000, the CT scanner appears to be quite a bargain.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Industrial burning of wood and vegetation can release a lot of smoke, which can cover large areas for extended amounts of time. Open burn is used in agriculture to dispose of crop residue, clear areas for planting, and control pests and disease. Let us return to the archives as Bill Dawson shares how Kitimat burns its fires hotter.
Terrace is one of many growing communities in the Northwest. Along with its growth and development comes a need to provide more living space, more homes and housing. Through this need, developers have taken the opportunity to build new subdivisions around the community. One concern they have to address is the potential nuisance of land clearing fires, one that poses no health hazards or potential of destroying important wildland interface. This summer, the Ministry of Environment and local fire chiefs got together to try something new. It's the process of using forced air through a culvert to burn land debris by an extremely hot, quick fire. The end result is little or no debris and excess smoke. Kitimat Fire Chief Bill Dawson says this new method has been used successfully in other areas of the province.
This principle is being used down the lower mainland, but with a very large machine that's very, very expensive. And there's nothing in the Northwest, so that means this contract will have to come all the way up here, and just the travel costs alone on top of the development are prohibitive, okay, for a very large one. So I think this is something that we can implement locally, and it's not a great expense for the developer. So I'm really impressed with it. Of course, you've got ideal day, you know, and the venting index, the smoke, what there is going straight up. And it might be a little different on an inversion day, but where the cloud level and atmospheric pressure is down. But I am impressed, and I think it's something that can work.
Several residents complained earlier this year of smoke pollutants during a land-clearing fire. And Terrace's Fire Chief Bob Beckett says trying this new method was costly, but cheaper in the long run.
Well, the test burn itself has been expensive to conduct on behalf of the engineering firm. They feel it's in their best interest, obviously, if they can come up with a satisfactory burn for the Ministry of the Environment to allow them to continue burning in this fashion rather than paying the exorbitant cost to remove the product to a facility. And right now we don't even have a facility to take it to. So getting back to the point that if the developer can save on the cost to land clear, it in turn will be passed on to the homeowner who's going to purchase the lot and home within the subdivisions. So it's a win-win situation, not only for the municipality because of the development, but for the land developer and of course the homeowner himself.
Beckett says he's convinced by this new method. He says the best results are achieved under the right conditions.
There's a number of factors that I believe will mitigate the smoke and ensure a clean burning fire. It takes an awful lot of coordination and cooperation of the land clearer, the owner, the developer, and Mother Nature. What's important, and not in any kind of priority, is number one, the seasoning of the wood. You know, we feel 4 to 6 months in the spring and summer dries the wood adequately so that it burns cleanly. The stumps, the material have to be clear of soil and debris, so that automatically means that your machine operator must be competent in what he's doing to help shake the material off of there.
Dawson says he recently dealt with a land-clearing fire in Kitimat, which caused a lot of concern with the smoke hazard. He says he'll highly recommend this new method for his community.
I mean, nobody wants to create a problem for the residents, but it was a case of which is the lesser of two evils, a little bit of smoke now or the fire hazard when the weather started like this. But I'm impressed with this system, and I think it can be economically implemented and really help the developer and also satisfy both MOE, forestry, and the local fire departments in getting rid of the fire hazard and controlling the smoke, which we're all concerned about, clean air in BC. So
I'm just looking for direction. As a fire protection manager for the city, my responsibility in issuing burning permits is to ensure that neither structure nor wildland interface, brush, forest are threatened by any form of approved burning. So that's my primary concern.
BC Environment Protection Officer Bernie Takema says the ministry was committed to find a viable method which would satisfy everyone. He says it's part of the ministry's mandate.
We have a Waste Management Act has been amended, which gets us more involved in the burning of land clearing debris, both inside municipalities and outside. So what we've been doing is working with the different fire departments and the Ministry of Forests to come up with alternatives to this open burning, which has in the past impacted a lot of people because of the smoke that it emits.
Takema explains one of the most important procedures during the burn.
Now, one of the key things they found, Chief, was the operator is critical to this type of burn. You know, he's got to be on top of it, he's got to be concentrating on what he's doing and feed it appropriately.
Takema says the forced air method of clearing land debris is something most Northwest residents can look forward to in the future. He says very little stands in the way of final approval.
Well, this was a test burn to see how well it worked on the material that they have and the system that they put in place, the forced air system. So now I'm going to be going back to Smithers and writing them an approval. And during this process, we will be contacting those people that had complained about the previous fire and explaining to them what is occurring and what is going to happen, giving them a chance to have a say in where we're going.
So far, the method appears environmentally sound. However, exposure to the smoke can still be considered a health hazard.
There's no 100% guarantee when you burn something that it may not impact people. It doesn't necessarily have to be health. It could be aesthetics. It could be aggravating. somebody hanging out their laundry gets dirty. So even though this has worked really well, it's still site dependent and weather dependent. There's a few conditions that we have to look at. But overall, I'm really pleased the way this has turned out, and I'm excited that the fire chiefs are willing to run with this.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Years ago, reporters used to take to the streets to ask people their opinions on all kinds of subjects. In journalism, these are called streeters. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives to hear what thoughts people had on 1993's North American Free Trade Act.
As far as I'm concerned, Moroni has sold us down the river. As far as I'm concerned, that's all I have to say about it.
Be beneficial for the ordinary businessman.
And that's good for everyone?
I think so.
I think Turner's right. It's no good? Free trade is good, but the deal is no good.
There's probably a lot I don't understand about it, but I'm really skeptical about the energy and the access they have to all, to everything we have. But there's a lot of thinking before election time, I tell you.
So basically, for or against?
Against.
I wonder why in 1983 Brian Mulroney stated that his party platform was they would not have free trade. He stated right then that the big companies, when they moved in and on the bad times, they would move right out again. I'm talking about American companies. And now why is he going for free trade? Why has he changed his mind? I can't understand that. And Michael Wilson was the same way. They've changed their mind. I don't know why.
So does that concern you then?
Oh, that really concerns me. That concerns me, and free trade in general concerns me just for probably the social upheaval that happened in this country. I'm totally against free trade.
I think they give Canada somebody good, somebody.
You think it's
like
good?
that? I think so.
I would like to speak more about it, but I don't know very much about it, so I don't know what to say.
It concerns me.
What do you think? Is it good or bad, or?
I have mixed feelings about it. My main concern with it is that I don't know enough about it, good or bad.
I think we should have it.
Do you?
I do.
You think will affect you as a?
I think it will affect all Canada.
For the better.
For the better part, yes.
I think I'm against it.
Some areas concern you about it?
Oh yes, definitely.
Well, I think they should send out more information so the average people know more about it.
Do you think you know enough about it to make an informed decision?
No, I don't think most people do.
I'd like to know more about it before they settle the issue.
You're against it, why?
Because I think it's going to affect the healthcare system and it's going to end up being more like it is in the States.
Is that bad?
And I think that's negative.
I'm a commercial fisherman and the price has gone up since we deal with the Americans, so it's good.
I don't know. I don't know too much about it, so I better not say anything.
I don't know about it, and I've never voted, so I'm the worst person to talk to.
So do you think it'll affect the way you vote?
The way what do you mean? That I don't know anything? Well, I probably won't vote because I don't know enough about it.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.